Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Sylvia and I talking about mental health in the workplace and mental health in general, depending on which way our conversation goes. It's totally unscripted, so don't expect us to have every argument lined up perfectly or every answer to every question. But that is where you come in, because as you listen to this, something may pop up in your head, and we love it when you put those comments in the comments box below or in our DMs, whatever you want to do.
And if you're shouting at the screen, add those in as well, because we love your comments.
So what we don't like is trolling, of course. Trolling which happens on the internet a lot and social media. But if we go into the workplace, whether we're there physically or we are working from home, there's something called bullying. It happens. A lot of us have been bullied at school. And a lot of us have been bullied in the workplace. So what is going on? What is a bullying in the workplace?
Interesting point, because I have been bullied in the workplace. I was bullied at school and when I was a kid, but in the workplace I have been bullied. But what's interesting, I've found it throughout my experiences of that and other people's experiences of that, and also being a hearing manager as well, when I was in business. What constitutes bullying? Because bullying isn't against the law, yet harassment is. But what's the difference between the two? And therein is the fine line. And I think what happens is a lot of people don't want to speak up for all sorts of reasons, and it can have, stating the obvious, a huge impact on our mental health, on our causing deteriorating poor mental health. People go off with stress, and all sorts of things with it. But again, you've got obviously the two sides. Why would someone bully, and why would someone be bullied? Equally, perceptions. For example, someone may be struggling with their own mental health and be irritable and argumentative and defensive and reacting to or talking to people in a certain way that the other person perceives that as bullying and harassment, rather than checking out with the other person, are they okay? Is something going on for them? Or is it pure bullying? In which case then, looking at both sides. In my own cases, when I've been bullied in the past, the first time I was bullied in the workplace, I wasn't brave enough to go and talk to anyone about it. And it went on for a period of time. I ended up leaving. Many years later, when I was bullied in the workplace, being in a very different physiological and psychological place myself, I stood up for myself and I went and spoke to HR, and they said the classic, from what I understand, response: you need to speak to your boss. But then what if your boss is the person bullying? Where do you go then? Then that's a bit of a really tricky situation.
It is, and very often I find the bullies are the ones with the real problem. If we go back to the playground at school where the big boys pick on the small ones or whatever is going on there, it's very often someone trying to assert themselves, trying to feel bigger by making someone else smaller. And that same thing goes into the workplace. It could be down to politics. It could be down to ambition or greed, that I think if I put other people down, I will rise to the top. Or it could just be crap attitude. It could be game. But there are people at work who get given all the rubbish tasks, who never can get that day off that they want, who will always find themselves excluded from the other group. There's something called isolationism in business, where people simply are not being given information. The emails don't happen. They're not invited to the meetings. They only find out later. That's bullying. It's not harassment really, or is it? But there are so many subtle ways where you can make a person in the workplace feel worthless, lose their self-confidence. And that has a massive impact on the way they perform at work. So that performance go down, therefore they are candidates for being fired because they're not functioning properly. And somebody might just then have achieved what they wanted. It could just be horseplay. It could be people being silly. I know of a situation where someone kept unplugging the charter from somebody's forklift so that when they turned up for work, they couldn't drive very far and thought the forklift truck had a fault. But no, it just never went on charge because somebody thought it was fun to unplug it. Mm. That's bullying. It's making somebody's life miserable at work. Mm. So it comes in sophisticated and in primitive forms.
Mm. They say, don't they, it's hard and soft bullying. And, you know, and we were talking about what is the difference. We were always understood that if one is treated, if that person treats that one person differently, for example, someone could be grumpy and argumentative, defensive the whole time. Mm-hmm. In which case then their response to people is not bullying. However, if they're okay with lots of people and with one or two people they're grumpy and argumentative, they're treating that person differently. And that then can fall under the categorization of bullying. So to your point, the forklift truck driver, if that person is just picking on that one person, then that constitutes bullying. You know, but again, it's to look at both sides, because as you say, that could be horseplay to someone. But if that person is being singled out, it becomes bullying. But the question then is, where does that person go when they are being bullied? How are they going to be perceived? And this now then falls into the whistleblowing, you know, area of what happens when someone does actually speak up. That's a whole different area.
It is a whole different area, but they're so linked to each other. Yeah. Because every company worth its salt or following the rules and regulations will have an anti-bullying policy. They will have an anti-money laundering policy. They will have all sorts of things that must be there from an HR perspective and from the safe running of a business. But just because there's an anti-bullying policy doesn't mean everybody understands it, that everybody has read it, nor does it mean that everybody adheres to what it says. And some of the bullies are probably not really aware that they are bullies. But their own mental health state is such that they're always on the attack, always alert, always sometimes trying to defend themselves, protect themselves. And then there's something else going on that would need some professional assistance to sort out. So there is you mentioned hard and soft bullying. I think there's also the conscious and the unconscious bullying. Yeah. But of course, whoever is on the receiving end is being bullied.
And the difficulty there is, you know, all organisations will undoubtedly have anti-bullying procedures and policies and everything else. But as we said before, it's to prove that bullying is taking place. Yeah. Because that has to be put in place before you can go down that route. And if someone then speaks up about being bullied, is how, as you said earlier, how's that going to be perceived? And also then we then go into the realms of toxic followership. If you've got a boss, it's perceived as a bully, oh, that's just the way he, she, or they are. Yeah. Does that make it acceptable? In my opinion, no, it doesn't. But you may then get a group or a team where someone speaks up, and then the others then, you know, when asked, oh, no, that's just the way the boss is. So you still can't prove bullying because everyone else has closed ranks. So where does that leave that person? Can leave them even more exposed because they've spoken up and nothing happens. But you still have to work in that environment while all this is going on. It's really difficult place to be.
It is. And what you just mentioned there was what happened to me at school. I complained to my class teacher that I wasn't being included in anything, that I was effectively being bullied. He sent me off to do some photocopying and spoke to the class in my absence. And when I came back into the room, you know, it was icy cold. They took it completely the wrong way. And the biggest of the bullies said, well, so we're not good enough for you, are we, Peter? So it got worse. It wasn't good to begin with, but it got worse because I spoke up. And that can happen in the workplace as well. We also have to remember that people are different. There's something called neurodiversity.
Indeed.
And people on the autistic spectrum have difficulty with the social interactions and can come across as being bullies, but actually that's not what they want. That's not their intention. So we really do have to ask a number of questions before we just go down the militant, I don't want to be bullied route. So if we can try and understand, where does a bully come from? Does he or she have a problem? Or does he or she simply want to create a problem just for the fun of it? Or is there something fundamentally different about that person that the rest of us have to adapt to?
And of course, you have different cultures. Different cultures behave in different ways. And, you know, and coming back to the point I made earlier, a lot of it can be one's perception. I mean, I had a boss many, many years ago. A lot of people used to say to me, how on earth can you work with that person? Well, that's just the way he is. He wasn't a bully. He was very, demanding. However, other people's perception was that he was a bully. And again, you know, on a bad day or on a day when I wasn't feeling so great, or if I was a different person, I may have perceived that behaviour in a different way. And this is where bullying is a very, very difficult thing to prove, to demonstrate, to evidence, because it's so much of it is around perceptions. And as we said earlier, if someone's having a bad day, someone else could easily perceive or misperceive that as being bullying. They might just be having a bad day. You know, they may have some stuff going on at home, their personal life or a loved one. And it comes out in being irritable or argumentative. You know, is that categorized as bullying? But it comes back to singling out someone as being different.
Yes.
So it's a very, very difficult thing.
And we also have to consider how long a timeline, how many incidences before we talk about bullying. Because if it's just a one-off, okay, the bully could have had a bad day. But if it's persistent, if it's targeted against one person all the time, then I think it's fair to start talking about bullying.
Yeah.
And then what kind of evidence do you need to gather? Who can you talk to? And all of this comes down again with HR being involved or the manager being the problem, so you can't complain to the manager because he or she is the problem. It all comes down to the culture, the climate in that organization, what is tolerated in terms of behavior and what isn't. And if no one really takes care of it, then you will have some rogue operators who need to be called out and dealt with, or some practices, you know, hazing and bullying of new people, and they get the worst computer to work with and that sort of stuff that I've been exposed to, is not on, and it just has to be the company ethos, not policies, but mentality to not allow bullying to happen.
I think, you know, to that point there is a lot of it comes back to speaking up, being able to be safe, that psychological safety piece around cultures and in the workplace where it's okay to speak up. People aren't going to be shot down. But it's, you know, it's very easy to say, but when you're in that situation and HR asks you to, you know, write down evidence, write down when it all happens, that's putting an extra strain, because, you know, people are already doing their day jobs.
Yes.
They're already doing their day jobs. They're already having to deal with being bullied. And on top of that, being asked to write down stuff that will be presented potentially in evidence, particularly if you're working in an environment where everyone else isn't being bullied. And you don't want to speak up because, again, you might be alienated, you might have even more bullying. It's a very, very difficult, and as we've said before, we don't have all the answers, but it's the impact on one's mental health is huge. I mean, I've known 2 people in my working life that have taken their own lives because they were bullied so badly in the workplace. And when they were brave enough to go and speak to HR sadly weren't very supportive. You know, do the evidence, speak to your boss, but where does that person go when it's the boss being the bully.
Yeah.
And then you're trapped. And then they're trapped, because you're in work, you want to do your best. And yes, as I say, 2 people that I know of have taken their own lives through workplace bullying, and that's just not right.
That is so incredibly sad and so unnecessary. And I hope that this conversation you and I have had has sparked some thinking in those of you watching, and thank you very much for doing that. And any comments you have, anything you want to contribute and add, is always welcome. Bullying happens, it should not happen, but people are people, and we need to learn how to act and interact together in a proper way.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for watching, and let us have your stories and your thoughts, and if you agree or disagree with us, that's fine. We want to hear it. Thank you so much. Take care.
Okay.
Bye
Thank
now.
you. Bye-bye. Bye.